When the alarm sirens first wailed through the Cold War bunker, the officer froze, eyes darting between the blinking red lights and the green radar screens. Every instinct screamed for immediate action, yet something in the data did not add up. The printed missile trajectory sheets lay scattered on the console, their numbers contradicting the blaring warnings. Hands hovered over mechanical switches, trembling, but he did not press the launch key. The silence between blips felt deafening. The low hum of the control room amplified in the tension. Every second stretched into an eternity, each officer in the room frozen under the weight of potential catastrophe. Red lights reflected on pale metal surfaces, casting moody shadows that seemed to mirror the officer's anxiety. The analog monitors flickered, displaying missile trajectories that appeared impossible. Radar blips jumping erratically across green screens. Sweat glistened on brows and hands. Uniforms creased under the soft glow of overhead lamps. Each rotary telephone and mechanical console became a symbol of power waiting to be unleashed, yet the officer hesitated, caught in a moment of human judgment against machine certainty. In the corridor outside, steel doors loomed, their cold surfaces amplifying the isolation and claustrophobia of the command center. His eyes darted between radar and printouts, trying to reconcile the numbers with the flashing warnings. The alarm lights stuttered, their glow creating shifting patterns of red and green across the metallic consoles. The air was thick with tension, the faint haze from ventilation swirling in the dim emergency lighting. Fingers hovered above the launch keys, the soft click of nearby switches echoing through the silence. He sensed the fragility of the system, the potential for irreversible disaster if he misjudged. Every detail, the flicker of a monitor, the reflection on a polished surface, the subtle quiver of a hand, carried weight beyond comprehension. The control room seemed to breathe with him, each blinking light and each faint mechanical hum intensifying the suspense. Officers in silhouette watched silently, their faces illuminated by the cold glow of screens, bodies rigid with fear. The thick steel doors of the bunker closed the outside world away, leaving only the immediate tension of human judgment versus automated protocol. The officers studied the radar blips, trying to identify any anomaly. Each paper chart, each printed trajectory line, became a lifeline in a room poised on the edge of nuclear catastrophe. The psychological strain was palpable, a slow-burning anxiety that filled every corner of the dimly lit room. Minutes stretched without resolution, yet he continued to scrutinize, weighing the impossible scenario against the impossible certainty of the alarms. The soft reflections of blinking red lights on polished consoles mirrored the beads of sweat forming on the officer's temple. Shallow breaths filled the silence, intermingled with the faint hum of radar equipment and mechanical switches. Each flicker of the green radar screen created new tension, every red blip a potential harbinger of doom. He leaned closer, studying the numbers, noticing inconsistencies that no one else seemed to see. The weight of history pressed down in that confined space. Suddenly, a blip moved erratically across the radar, contradicting the previous pattern. His eyes widened as realization dawned. This was not an incoming missile strike, but a system error, a false alarm triggered by the machine itself. Relief and lingering fear battled across his features, yet he remained calm, understanding that premature action would have had catastrophic consequences. The tension slowly dissipated, though the room remained thick with the aftermath of near panic. The officers exhaled collectively, some shaking, some silently relieved, all aware of how close they had come to disaster. The red lights continued to blink, now devoid of threat, casting their moody reflections across consoles and metal surfaces. The radar screens stabilized, green blips tracing familiar, harmless patterns. The officer, though tense, allowed himself a small sigh, the weight of responsibility pressing gently but unmistakably on his shoulders. Every detail of the room, the analog dials, the rotary phones, the mechanical switches, now seemed to glow with significance, silent witnesses to averted catastrophe. Outside, the steel doors remained closed, protecting a world that had unknowingly depended on a single act of judgment. The officer's hands relaxed slightly over the console, eyes lingering on the radar display. Sweat still clung to his brow, but the tension had shifted from panic to awareness. The quiet hum of the room felt heavier now with reflection rather than dread. He reviewed the printed trajectory sheets again, cross-referencing the data with the stabilized screens. Every flicker of light, every mechanical click, reminded him that human judgment was the final line of defense in a room dominated by machines. The psychological weight of near catastrophe lingered in every shadowed corner. Red and green lights cast complex reflections across consoles and metallic surfaces, blending with the soft, volumetric glow of overhead lamps. The officers' colleagues returned slowly to their duties, hands hovering over mechanical switches with caution, eyes occasionally flicking to stabilized radar screens. The room remained cold and dim, a monument to vigilance, with every surface reflecting the human fragility that underpinned immense technological power. Each paper, each button, each switch reminded them that one false step could have meant disaster. In the corridor outside, thick steel doors separated the bunker from the outside world, silently holding back chaos. Inside, the soft hum of analog monitors, the faint stuttering of warning lights, and the subtle echoes of mechanical switches filled the space with quiet tension. The officer remained at his station, alert yet composed, understanding the gravity of every second that had passed. He studied the radar, the printouts, the patterns, making sense of the chaos without succumbing to panic. The room's silence was heavy, almost reverent, a tribute to lives preserved by one moment of critical skepticism. As the minutes passed, the officer continued to cross-check data, ensuring that the anomaly had truly passed. His eyes reflected green radar blips and the soft glow of red warning lights, the room bathed in a cold cinematic light that highlighted the psychological drama of the moment. The tension gradually eased, but the memory of near catastrophe remained palpable. Each switch, dial, and console now seemed infused with the weight of responsibility and the fragility of human decision-making. Finally, the blaring alarms ceased, leaving only the faint hum of electronics and the quiet breathing of exhausted officers. The radar screen, stabilized completely, green blips tracing harmless paths across the monitors. Relief settled over the room, but the gravity of the near disaster was unmistakable. The officer allowed himself a brief exhale, knowing that his skepticism had bought not just minutes, but the preservation of countless lives. The soft shadows and reflections in the dimly lit room now seemed almost reverent, capturing the magnitude of human judgment against technological uncertainty. Every detail, the analog monitors, mechanical switches, rotary phones, printed data sheets, thick steel doors, and ambient low-key lighting, remained a silent testament to the thin line between catastrophe and survival. The officer's calm vigilance had turned potential apocalypse into quiet order. He stood in the dim glow of emergency lights, eyes reflecting the stabilized radar, contemplating the immense responsibility resting on a single decision. History had been preserved in that moment of clarity and doubt. The room settled into a quiet routine once more, yet the psychological tension lingered like a shadow. Officers moved cautiously, glancing at consoles and radar screens, aware of how easily disaster could have unfolded. Each piece of equipment, every flicker of light, every printed sheet carried the memory of near catastrophe. The officer's judgment had prevailed, and the room's silence now became a heavy, reflective calm, filled with awareness and subdued reverence. In the aftermath, the Cold War bunker remained a monument to human judgment and restraint. The subtle volumetric light illuminated the faces and consoles, casting long shadows that seemed to hold the weight of history. The officer returned to monitoring, eyes scanning green radar screens with intense focus, aware that the system's fallibility had been exposed. Every reflection, every mechanical hum, reminded him and the room's occupants of the delicate balance between technology and human oversight. Time moved slowly in the dimly lit command room, but the officer's mind remained alert. Each blip on the radar was a potential threat, each flickering light a reminder of the fragility of the moment they had just survived. The psychological tension of near catastrophe had left its imprint, visible in every shadow, every reflection, every metallic surface. The officer's composed vigilance became the anchor for all who shared the bunker, emphasizing that human discernment could still prevail where alarms and machines faltered. Even as normal monitoring resumed, the room retained a heavy, almost sacred atmosphere. Red and green lights cast patterned reflections on consoles, walls, and steel doors. The analog instruments hummed steadily, and rotary telephones sat silently, awaiting their potential use. The officer's steady gaze conveyed not only relief, but a profound understanding of the power and danger inherent in the room's technology. History had paused, and human judgment had made the difference. The officer remained at the center of the room, a figure of calm determination amidst a sea of blinking lights, shadows, and metallic surfaces. His eyes moved constantly across radar screens and printed data sheets, hands occasionally hovering over mechanical switches. Each flicker, each reflection, each subtle movement of light reminded him of the razor-thin margin between control and chaos. The psychological weight of near miss lingered in the dim emergency glow, leaving a silent reverence in its wake. The calm after the storm was palpable, yet the room retained the echoes of near catastrophe. Officers moved quietly, hands occasionally brushing consoles, eyes flicking to green radar blips, aware of how close disaster had come. The soft, volumetric light highlighted sweat, creases in uniforms' reflections across metallic surfaces, and the faint film grain of the historical environment. Every detail emphasized the fragility of human life and the importance of measured judgment. The officer, still alert, allowed himself only a brief exhale, his eyes never leaving the radar screens. Each mechanical switch, rotary telephone, and printed sheet served as a reminder that the line between catastrophe and survival had been navigated through human discernment. The Cold War bunker seemed to hold its breath, shadows deep and moody, red and green lights blinking as silent witnesses to history's narrow escape. In that quiet, tense aftermath, the psychological weight of the moment settled over everyone present. The officer's calm decision-making had averted disaster, proving that in the face of machines, human judgment was the final safeguard. The dimly lit room, filled with analog equipment and reflective surfaces, now felt almost sacred, a historical capsule of tension, restraint, and survival.